There comes times in our lives, regardless of what stage of life you're in, that changes happen. And sometimes the changes can be really big, really drastic. A few years ago, several years ago, I guess, my family experienced a big change. And you see what happened for many years. I think our family was doing great. Hope and I, we had 4 people in our family. Hope and I, and we had 2 kids. And the world, if you're raising kids and you have 4 kids, you don't know this, but the world is, or you have 2 kids, like 4 people total, the world is made for you. Like, if you've got 4 people in your family, you can rent 1 hotel room when you go on vacation. If you have 4 people in your family, you can fit at a booth at a restaurant. If you have 4 people in your family, you can fit in a regular-sized automobile together. Like, there are so many things in our world that is made for people and for families of 4. And it's golden. Like like not only is it like cheaper to have like 4 people in your family, but like it has all these different spots along the way where it's more convenient, just the world being built that way. And then our family decided to grow by 2 more. Well, we didn't really make all those decisions, but like our family, in the sense the big changes happened, our family has since grown by 2 more. And the story there has to do with like miracles, near-death experiences, infertility, and chance, and weird stuff. And so like the stories there are quite long, and I'm not going to spend time today talking about it, but it's like a dramatic story in the midst of it. And it all began with a near-death experience, and so that's something for perhaps another day, or maybe that's even too personal for another day, I don't know. But like after that, our family, we now have 2 sets of kids. We have older kids who are like teenagers, almost teenagers, and we have younger kids who are not even in real school yet, like preschool and toddler age. And the change just happened. And so when you're a family of 6 with 4 kids, no longer can you rent 1 hotel room. No longer can you drive in 1 car together. No longer can you eat at a booth at a restaurant together. And the list kind of goes on from there. And on top of that, our kids are so spread out that we have challenges that we're trying to be parents with kids that are older and like in middle school and such, and kids that are still trying to not sleep with a pacifier. And actually, we're not even trying that. It just is at this point. But just totally different ends of the spectrum. And we know that when people are in different ages and stages of life, people have different needs. And the same thing is true with kids. And the challenges in navigating between these sets of kids is difficult. I mean, teenagers need teenagers things, and toddler needs toddler things. And sometimes you're in like toddler mode of parenting, and then you're trying to be a good parent with your teenager, and it doesn't work out because you're still in toddler mode of parenting. And so I've got a lot of apologizing to do in the midst of this. But life and challenges, these things happen. And sometimes, family life, regardless of what age or stage of life that you're in, can be very challenging. And I know that all families face challenges these days. All families, and it's not just these days. Families have always faced challenges. Families always face challenges. Maybe if you're raising kids right now, young kids, you have challenges of childcare. You have challenges of trying to figure out where kids are going to be on any given night. I don't think you have to be raising kids to know that weekly dinners can be a challenge, whether it's fighting about which restaurant you're going to go eat at, or whether it's just trying to figure out if those leftovers are still good or not. Trying to figure out those weekly dinners can be challenging. Families have struggles and challenges over having kids, whether or not to have kids, over infertility and struggles there. Families struggle with finances and jobs and housing and just kind of affording life in different ways and in different stages of life. I mean, we have families that are really struggling with doctor's appointments and trying to figure out which doctor's appointment and scheduling around and trying to make sure you can see the right one at the right time. And then we have, sibling rivalries between different siblings and sets of siblings and what that means. And we also know that some families struggle more than other families for different reasons. Some families families have a lot of really big health things going on in life right now, and that complicates everything and puts everything else on hold. Some families are struggling with loss and the loss of a member of their family through death or something else. We have loss through divorce and remarriage and trying to blend families together and bring different people together. And all of these things, there are full of struggles in the midst of life, full of struggles and trying to just live each and every day. And it doesn't matter how large or how small your family is, whether you're a family of one or whether you're a family of 12, like you have your own struggles that are unique and present for you. And what I want to share with you today is that God is familiar with many of these struggles. God knows and is familiar with so many of these struggles that families face today. And today I want to share with you a story in the Bible about a family who faced a lot of challenges. And their struggles and their challenges, they were faced as what we call, I guess, a blended family of bringing different households together. And this is a big struggle for this family. We're going to see how that kind of plays out today and see what perhaps we can learn from it. But the story comes from the book of Genesis. And so if you have a Bible, you want to follow along, I want to invite you to open it up to the book of Genesis, about the 15th chapter. And Genesis is the first book of the Bible. So Genesis is the book that starts the Bible. It tells the stories of creation, about how God spoke creation into being. And then it also tells stories of God's relationship with early humanity, with early families, God's relationship of trying to help people make an impact in the world and make the world a better place. And then it talks about some struggle along the way there as well. And today the story we're going to pick up learning about begins in Genesis chapter 15 and goes actually for several chapters. It's the story of Abraham and Sarah. And today we're going to look at these few chapters, and I just kind of want to tell you the story of Abraham and Sarah and those others that are connected there, and to share what happened. And before I do that, I want to say that as I'm reading this scripture, Abraham and Sarah are also known by some other names, Abram and Sarai. So these are just some other names, and then later on their names got changed. So Abraham and Sarah are also Abram and Sarai. So as I'm reading scripture and as I'm telling the story, sometimes I might refer to them as Abram and Sarai, and sometimes Abraham and Sarah. And the intention is not to confuse us or to try to insert more people into the story. They're same folks, just kind of with different names along the way. And you see, Abraham and Sarah, they had a pretty special family. I mean, they really did. They had a pretty special family, and God chose them for a big mission to accomplish. God chose Abraham and Sarah for a big mission to accomplish in their family. And God made a promise to Abraham in the midst of this, that Abraham would have numerous descendants. Now, if you grew up going to Bible school or church camp, maybe you know the song "Father Abraham had many sons had Father Abraham." Like this is that story, right? That Abraham had many descendants. And in Genesis chapter 15, verse 5, we get the idea of how many descendants that we're talking about here. Here we read that God brought Abraham, same person. God brought Abram outside and said, "Look up at the sky and count the stars. And if you think you can count them." He continued, "This is how many children you will have." Now, if you were going to go up and count the stars today, we have a lot of light pollution, so you wouldn't see all the stars. You might get off easy, but still, I couldn't imagine looking up. Doesn't matter how much light pollution, and see, there's more than 4 stars up there. I don't need any more than 4 kids. I would start to get a little bit nervous about this. Like that's challenging. And so if you look up at the stars and you start to see countless stars across the horizon, and you're like, God, how is this even possible? But the problem is that Abraham and Sarah, they weren't exactly spring chickens, to use that cliche. Abraham was old, and Sarah was older as well, and she was past childbearing years. And infertility, is a struggle that they were facing as a family. Infertility is a struggle that so many families face. It's a part of my own family story, but in that day and age when Abraham and Sarah were living, it wasn't just something that was a fact. It wasn't just something that was hard. Infertility in the age in which Abraham and Sarah were living was even more difficult than it is today, because there was social stigma. There was not just social stigma, there was also value judgments placed, because it was assumed that God was the one that wouldn't allow you to have kids. It was assumed that perhaps there was something sinful or wrong with you if you weren't able to do this. So it's not just that it couldn't happen and you have a loss there. It's that there was the loss there, and then there was all these other social and kind of religious side effects that were along the way as well. And this is where things are about to start to get complicated, because Abraham is told by God, you're going to have more descendants than you can count in the stars, and then the reality is they don't have any kids. And it's like, how is that going to happen? And so Sarah, his wife, she's a smart lady, and she thinks that she can do something to help the situation. And so we read about what she tries to do to help the situation in Genesis chapter 16, beginning in verse 1. Where we read this, that since she had an Egyptian servant named Hagar, so Sarah had a servant, and her name was Hagar, Sarai said to Abram, the Lord has kept me from giving childbirth, or from giving birth. So go to my servant, maybe she will provide me with children. This is where you kind of read the story and you're like, I'm sorry, what? That she just said to do what? Go to my friend, my servant, my employee, whomever she is, and maybe she will give me children. What is going on? What is Abraham supposed to do in this situation? If you're a man, maybe you're thinking, is this a trick? Is this something that I should know the answer to, but I don't really know the answer to? But as any show or TV show or movie might make clear, that if the wife is giving her husband permission to enjoy time with another woman, what's he supposed to do in this situation? Here we find out what he does next, and this is in just a little bit further down, that we read that Abram did just as Sarah said. He slept with Hagar, and she became pregnant. But when she realized that she was pregnant, she no longer respected her mistress. What happened? Well, another woman is brought into the marriage. And in fact, and what I didn't read, and that part that comes before this, is not that she was just brought into the marriage. Abraham actually marries her. She actually becomes Abraham's second wife. And we don't live in a culture where having multiple spouses is even legal, much less a thing to be encouraged. And so it's hard to imagine what this would be like, but I don't know what the cultural significance of this is, if it's kind of a normal thing or if it's an abnormal thing. But whatever the case, it was at least within the realm of possibility that Abraham not only is married to Sarah, but now is also married to Hagar. And he did exactly what his wife Sarah had told him to do. And here we can see that things are beginning to get a bit dicey, because this second wife, she gets pregnant when Sarah is not able to get pregnant. She gets pregnant, and it says here in Genesis chapter 4, or it says here in what was just on the screen, that she no longer respected her mistress. So she lost respect for this lady. And then in verse 5, we read about how the problems continue. Sarah said to Abram, this harassment is your fault. I allowed you to embrace my servant, but when she realized that she was pregnant, I lost her respect. So let the Lord decide who is right, you or me. And basically what happens is that Sarah treats Hagar harshly, and Hagar ends up running off. She's pregnant, and she ends up running off alone in the desert by herself. But here's the thing, even though she's alone, even though the conditions are harsh, even though she is pregnant, and even though she has nothing for herself, God doesn't leave her. And God comes to her, and God gives her strength, and God says, you know what you need to do? You need to go back. You need to go back to Abraham. You need to go back home and kind of continue to live in this situation. He invites her to return, and she does return. And I think Abraham, if you read the story, is glad about this because Hagar gives birth to Abraham's first child, and they name him together, they name him Ishmael. And remember how I said that Abraham and Sarah were a little old, at least old to have newborn kids. Well, this kid is born when Abraham is 86 years old. 86 years old, bringing home a new baby. Now, maybe some of you are people that are 86 years old or whatnot. You know, you may not be bringing home a baby yourself, but maybe you have children who have children, so grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and maybe you have a joy to be around them, but they go home. They go home, and you don't have to keep them overnight. But that's not the case here. That Abraham and Sarah are Abraham is like all that there is here, and Hagar, so 86 years old. And I'm sure that after this happened, the relationship at home was hard, right? Because you have Sarah, who is Abraham's first wife, his first love, but yet they weren't able to have kids, and now she sees him with Hagar, who's probably much younger, and Hagar is raising this little tyke, and they're trying to build a life together, and so there's jealousy, there's resentment that enters into the thing, and God, though, in the midst of this, what you need to know is that even though they're challenging, even though things are challenging, God continues to pour into Abraham and Sarah and to bless them. Continues to do it. And 14 years after Ishmael is born, so Abraham's son is a teenager. Abraham has a teenager at home. 14 years after his son is born, God comes to Abraham again. And this time, he's not 86 years old, he's 100 years old. So Abraham is 100 years old, and his wife Sarah is 90 years old. And God tells them in Genesis chapter 17, verse 19, God tells them that your wife Sarah will give birth to a son, and you will name him Isaac. And I'm sure at this point they're like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? In fact, there's some laughter that goes on in the midst of this. But God continues and says, I will set up my covenant with him and with his descendants after him as an enduring covenant. As for Ishmael, I've heard your request. So Abraham is still praying for Ishmael because Abraham loves his son, Ishmael. And God says, as for Ishmael, I've heard your request. I will bless him and make him fertile and give him many, many descendants. And he will be the ancestors of 12 tribal leaders, and I will make a great nation of him. But I will set up my covenant with Isaac, who will be born to Sarah at this time next year. I mean, to be honest, it's a little unbelievable that Abraham and Sarah would have kids at their age. And they both actually laugh at this prospect. They both actually laugh that this would even be possible. But God speaks to this laughter and says, is anything too difficult for the Lord? Is anything too difficult for the Lord? When I return to you about this time next year, Sarah will have a son. Sarah will have a son this time next year. And then later in chapter 21, we kind of read how this continues. That the Lord was attentive to Sarah just as he had said. And the Lord carried out just what he promised to her. And she became pregnant and gave birth to a son for Abraham when he was old, at the very time God had told him. And God named his son, the one Sarah bore him, Isaac. Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, just as God had commanded him. And Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born. And Sarah said, God has given me laughter. Everyone who hears about it will laugh with me. At the beginning, they were laughing that it was even possible, and now they're laughing with joy that God has given me laughter in the midst of my hard heart. She said, who could have told Abraham that Sarah would nurse sons? But now I've given birth to a son, even when he was old. The joy in the birth of a little one. The joy in the birth of a little one. Even with such a difficult family dynamic, there is joy. But remember, Abraham has another wife. It's complicated, right? Abraham has another wife, a lady by the name of Hagar, and another son, a guy by the name of Ishmael. And at this point, Ishmael's a teenager. He's lived his whole life with his dad as his only, like on his own as a single, or as like the only child, or at least the only son. And he's used to certain things. He's used to doing certain things a certain way. He's the only child in the family. He's got a pretty good life at this point. But now there is another one who has arrived. And any firstborn children will remember, or at least, kind of have this thought that, yeah, life was pretty good until like the other ones came along and ruined that perfect relationship that I had. I don't carry that along with me anymore. I just have given that up as the oldest child, I guess. But, we have this idea that life was great for this guy, but now another one has arrived, and this other one is his half-brother. And he cries and he whines and he takes up his dad's attention, and he's got diapers to change, and he eats and he poops, and like that's all the kid does, and everybody thinks he's cute. What about me? I'm actually like growing, and I'm actually can do something. And this is about to be the cause of even more tension, which we read about in Genesis 21 verse 8. The boy grew and stopped nursing. So he's a little bit older by this point, Isaac is. And on the day that he stopped nursing, Abraham prepared a huge banquet. And Sarah saw Hagar's son laughing, the one Hagar, the Egyptian, had born to Abraham. So there's this banquet going on. Everybody's celebrating Isaac. And Sarah notices her I guess, stepson laughing. Now, we don't know why he's laughing. He could be laughing with his buddies about some joke that somebody told, some middle school joke that was told, and he could be laughing. Like, we don't know why he's laughing, but Sarah takes this to heart with all the postpartum, like, emotions, everything going on with the jealousy that's inflicted in her family, and she thinks and she knows that Ishmael's laughing for some reason, but Ishmael's laughing at her, and Ishmael's laughing at their new son, Isaac. So she said to Abraham, "Send this servant away and her son. This servant's son won't share the inheritance with my son Isaac." Abraham loved his son. And of course, this upset Abraham terribly, because the boy, that's Ishmael, was his son. And what happens next is hard. I mean, it's really hard. But Abraham listens to Sarah. He listens to her again, and he sends Hagar and Ishmael away. And the pain is there, the jealousy is there, and everyone is in a challenging place. And Hagar and his son are sent out into the desert, and they, at some point, they're close to death because they've run out of water, and they're not really sure if anything is going to happen with them next. They think that maybe their time is over. But even as they're facing this challenge, God doesn't abandon them. God is still there, and God provides for them. God saves them and provides a future of hope for them. And you can continue to read their story. We're not going to follow their story, but it continues to go on, and God blesses them in a powerful way. For Abraham and Sarah, and I'm sure for Hagar too, there are missteps that are made along the way. There are missteps and there are mistakes that made and contributed to making life hard. That they did, that made their choices they did, that made their life more challenging. I mean, Abraham and Sarah made decisions in their marriage that made their marriage more challenging, more difficult. Then Abraham acts in a way that makes things hard for his wife, for Sarah. Then Sarah acts in a way that harms another family member, Hagar, Abraham's second wife, whom she encouraged Abraham to marry, but now she's jealous of. And then there's a teenager who just needs his mom and dad, and his stepmom sends him away. I mean, it's hard stuff. Issues of jealousy and infidelity and hardships, these are real issues that families deal with today, that are still happening today. And if you go back yourself and read the whole story from Genesis 15 to 21, you are going to find time and again mistakes and missteps from all the people involved. All these different ways that they made choices that made things more difficult in their life. And maybe you're thinking, I've made choices and I've made missteps in my life that have made things more difficult. You will see some things that surprise you, and you will see other things, if you read this, that will sound familiar. The thing is, though, through the whole narrative, through the whole story that is there, God remains faithful. God remains faithful. You see, it was God who promised Abraham a son. And when Abraham took a second wife to try to make this happen, it was still God who remained faithful. And even as the marriage to his second wife broke down, God remained faithful to her and to Abraham's first son, Ishmael. And all along the way, God kept promises and provided, even as the adults in the story just kind of made bad decisions and just kind of messed up and misstepped. So what does this mean for you? What does this mean for you? What does this mean for me? I mean, the reality is that God's faithfulness can save you from your missteps and your mistakes. God's faithfulness can save you from your missteps and your mistakes. And I want to invite you to reflect on your own family and your own family dynamics, wherever they are. And where are they difficult right now? Where are they difficult right now? It doesn't matter what age or stage of life you're in. If you're part of a family and there's things that are difficult today, they may not be the same things that were difficult, 10, 5, 15, 20, however many years ago, but they're difficult today. What challenges are your family facing now? And if it's not you, maybe you're thinking about somebody you know, somebody you care about. Maybe it's someone close to you who's got a family who's really struggling today. And regardless of where you are, I want you to hear that God's faithfulness can save you from your missteps and your mistakes. It can. Abraham's family didn't have it all together, and even the way that things turned out, they weren't picture perfect. They weren't, but God remained faithful. And God's faithfulness saved them from their own missteps and from their own mistakes. There are things you can do to help. I mean, there are things that you can do to not act like Abraham and Sarah. I mean, you can be honest with your spouse. You can keep open communication with those around you. You can seek forgiveness. You can show love, and you can be patient. But even in the midst of this, you're going to mess up. You're going to screw up. Even in the midst of this, you're going to misstep. And what I want you to hear is that when you do this, God's faithfulness can save you from your missteps and your mistakes. And if you find yourself struggling with challenges in your family right now, I want to encourage you also to reach out to someone. One of the ways that we want to help you do this, that I want to help you do this, is by being with other people, being with other families, being with other people together. And that's why we're starting these new groups called Belong Groups. And if you've been here for a while, maybe you've heard me talk about them. But you see, it's not just about you and your own family struggles, because we're all at different places. Everybody has their own struggles. And so imagine what it would be like if we all supported each other. And each family, each person is surrounded by a group of people who are committed to helping them when life gets tough. I mean, that's what these groups, they're all about. They're all about this, the being together and helping one another experience God's faithfulness. They're all about helping you experience God's faithfulness in good times and in challenging times. They're about helping you experience God's faithfulness even in your missteps and your mistakes, because God's faithfulness can save you from your missteps and your mistakes. And so we have these Belong Groups that we're going to be launching here in just a couple weeks. And in fact, we're going to have signups for these Belong Groups on August 25th. That's the last Sunday of this month as we celebrate Next Step Sunday. But today you have a chance. If you're like, you know what, I need to learn more about this. I want to get connected about this, and I don't want to wait another day to learn about this. And inside your worship program or on our Next Steps QR code page, there's this little form, this yellow form inside your worship program that says Belong Groups. And all you have to do is say, yeah, I'm interested in joining a Belong Group. I'm interested in it. This isn't signing it in stone. This isn't signing you up for anything. All this is doing is putting you on a list to help you stay informed about what's coming next in the next few weeks. And we did this a few weeks ago, and I reached out to some folks. And my hope is that if you're interested in this, you'll let us know today so that we can make sure you stay connected and make sure you learn more. And maybe you're sitting here today and you're thinking about hosting. We've got about 4 4 or 5 hosts that are going to be hosting groups. And I'm really excited about them because our folks that are hosting groups are from all different ages and stages in life. We have folks that are younger families who are raising kids at home. We have folks that don't have kids and they're at kind of a different stage in life. We have folks that aren't raising kids, and I'm not going to call them older, but they're not raising kids, okay? And they might be a little bit retired, okay? Is that fair? But we have people that are all different ages and stages of life because it's important, and everybody needs this. Everybody needs a chance to connect with somebody else. Everybody needs a chance to receive this faithfulness of God and have somebody to help walk with you when times get hard and when times are good. So today I want to invite you to just express your interest in joining a Belong group. And if you're thinking that maybe you want to learn more about hosting, you can let us know that too. Because these groups are going to grow and we're going to need more hosts and helping connect more people. And just turn this in today. There's some baskets up here. You can turn this in those baskets. You can also fill out the form online and we'll connect you there. Because it's all about God's faithfulness to help and save you from your missteps and your mistakes. To take that next step. And sometimes all you need to do is take that next step to be with other people, that they can help you experience that in your own life. And another thing you can do, and this is the last thing that I'll share with you, but another thing that you can do is that you can pray. And I want to help you, invite you to live into and to accept God's faithfulness every day. So I want to invite you to pray with me. And we have, for the past few weeks, we've been in the middle of a daily prayer challenge. And we have some prayer guides, daily prayer guides for this coming week. And these are prayers that are designed to help you and help your family grow closer to God regardless of your life stage, and to pray also for other people in their families as well. And so pick one of these up on your way out, or you can download this information by scanning that code, or you'll get one in your email if you sign up for our emails. But I just want you to know that this is what it means to be the church together. As we belong together, as we're in groups together, and as we pray together, God's faithfulness is continuing to grow in our experience of it. And I give you thanks. So right now, what I want to do is I want to pray for you, and I want to pray for your family. And I know that you have your own missteps and you have your own mistakes. And as we continue to worship God this day, if you need to speak to someone, please know that I'm available. Please know that if you want to come up forward and pray at these kneeling rails, you're welcome to do so. And just ask that you open your heart to whatever it is that God wants you to experience today, God's faithfulness. Let's pray. God, I thank you. I thank you that you're faithful, because I know that I mess up. I know that sometimes my mess-ups have been small, and sometimes they've been pretty big. Sometimes my missteps and mistakes have hurt other people. Sometimes they've hurt me and my relationships. And I give you thanks that it's your faithfulness that promises to save us. Your faithfulness that gave me a second chance. So God, right now, I pray for everyone who's here. I pray that their hearts are open. Their hearts are open to your faithfulness, to receiving your faithfulness, so that you can save them from their missteps and their mistakes. And when things are difficult, I pray, God, that they will surround themselves with other people that want to help them experience your faithfulness. And if there's anyone here today that needs to take that next step in faith, pray that you help them to say yes to you. And yes to your faithfulness. I give this all to you. God of love, God of salvation, God of faithfulness.